Hello everyone and welcome to my makerspace. My name is the Alex Beast and today I'm going to be introducing you to my current project. We're working on a scale model of the USS Voyager from the TV show Star Trek Voyager. This is by far the most ambitious modeling project I've ever taken on, as not only is it the largest model, as I'm usually used to working with miniatures, but also this is the first time I've ever incorporated any kind of electronics into a model. I'm already pretty far into this thing, so in order to get you caught up, I'm going to be showing you what I've accomplished up to this point. Starting off, let's introduce the kit itself. This is Revell's 1/670 scale model of the USS Voyager. Once assembled, the finished model will measure around 18 inches long. One thing to note about my build is that I'm not going for a screen-accurate version of the model once complete. There are several minor details that I've opted not to include in the model, such as the floodlights in the front of the ship and the bottom side port and starboard marking lights. This kit was originally produced around 20 years ago, and as a result, the model had several surface blemishes and plenty of flashing. Overall, these defects were minor and were handled easily with just a little bit of sanding. Now, because this is a work in progress model, and I only got the idea to start filming it about a week ago, there's going to be quite a lot of stuff that I don't have on video for you. So where I don't have video, I'm going to do my best to show you pictures and explain what's going on. Let's get to it. Moving on to my specific model, let's start with the saucer section. The first thing you'll notice is the many holes representing the windows. Out of the box, these were not holes, but rather divots. Each window had to be drilled out, then filed by hand to achieve the square shape. There are just shy of 1,000 windows on this model, each requiring 2 holes to be drilled. That's almost 2,000 holes to drill. The next major feature to point out here are the phaser strips. I wanted to add a lighting effect to them, so I drilled out the center of each of the top side phaser arrays, then covered them with a sheet of plasticard. I then cut, filed, and sanded these down so that they formed a perfect shape over the phaser array, and will serve as an excellent diffuser for the lights sitting behind them. The final feature of the saucer section are the port and starboard marker lights on the top side. These are just plain old LEDs. This is one area where I'll be deviating from the studio model. The real Voyager model had these lights on both the top and bottom sides of the ship, but for simplicity's sake, I decided to just go for the top ones. Moving along down the ship, we have the main hull section. There's not a lot to show off in this section just yet, but it is the part that I'm actively working on, so be looking for progress on it soon. Once again, there are several windows that had to be drilled and filed to shape in order to allow for the interior lights to shine through. I have decided to change the base mounting location. The original location was more towards the stern of the ship, right behind the deflector dish. Moving it back towards the engines provides the room needed to add lighting for the main deflector dish. This had the bonus advantage of allowing me to not have to worry about a detail on the belly, which took some damage when the two halves of the hull section were glued together. To finish off the ship portion of the model, we have the engines. This is the most complete portion of the ship at this point. The nacelles were the only parts of the model that were made from the factory to be lit. Each nacelle has a clear plastic window running along the side for the blue glowing engines that are iconic to every Starfleet ship. I made small bulkheads from plasticard to seal the main part of the engines off from the front portion. This is to prevent the blue light from the engines bleeding into the red portion up front. Moving on to the engine pylons, I once again drilled and filed holes for the impulse engines. This allowed me to put a red LED behind them to provide another lighting effect. I used a liberal amount of hot glue in securing the LEDs in place, which served as a great diffusing material. This helped spread the light evenly across all the ports for the impulse engine. Another deviation I have from the studio model is that the engine nacelles do not move up into the warp positions like they do in the show. The kit comes with this functionality, but I made the executive decision to just glue them in place. This was both to prevent a major light leak that was present where the pylons meet the rear of the section, but also to eliminate the risk of this motion breaking any of my wiring connections. This was the first section of the ship that was sealed up, so I used it as my primary testing ground for using putty. I've never really used putty before in modeling, and I had to learn a lot in this area. I tried using Tamiya white putty to fill in the seam lines, but it was largely unhappy with its performance. Every time after I sanded it down, the seam line would persist. I eventually started using Milliput as a putty of choice as I found this performed much better. All the electronics of this piece were soldered onto a piece of perf board, which I then sealed inside the main rear section. This allowed me to minimize the number of wires coming out of this section and running through the rest of the model. All I need is a ground, signal, and power wire to hook the entire section up. Finally, let's go over the electronics. Starting off in this category, the phasers, engines, and main hull lights are all NeoPixels by Adafruit. Each of these lights is fully RGB and individually addressable, allowing for some pretty nifty lighting effects. The lights and everything else in the model are controlled by an Arduino Nano microcontroller. I originally picked the Nano for its compact size, but this will likely be upgraded to an Arduino Mega in the final version. I am quickly running out of I/O pins for everything I want to control, and since I plan for the controller to live in the base and not in the model, size is not that big of a concern. Finally, the last major electronic component of this build is the sound system. Controlling this is Adafruit's Audio FX mini soundboard. This neat little board connects to your computer via USB where it reads just like a thumb drive. You can then upload your files to it following a certain naming convention. The names of the files determine which pin they play off of and how they will activate. Output from this board is sent to a 2.1 watt Class D amplifier, which I also picked up from Adafruit. Without this board, the signal from the soundboard is too weak to be played on the speakers. I'll leave links to all the components in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. There you have it, everybody. That's where I'm at with Voyager. Thanks everyone so much for watching this. I can't wait to get started on some of the progress I'm ready to make on this model. If you watch closely, you can kind of get a hint at what's going to be coming up in the next video, as I kind of discovered something while filming this that we need to correct. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.